Next on Bright Founders Talk, join Chris Maurice, CEO of YellowCard, as he shares his journey from selling Pokemon cards to leading a successful startup on the African continent. In this video, Chris discusses the importance of releasing your product and being a completionist rather than a perfectionist. He also talks about building a team with diverse perspectives and navigating the challenges of cultural clashes. Despite the turbulence in the crypto world, Chris believes that it has potential still and emphasizes the need for governments to enable innovation. Nothing can thrive without room to innovate. All this and more on Bright Founders Talk by Temi.
Okay guys, hello and welcome back to Bright Founders Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Today guys, we've got with us Chris from YellowCard, CEO. Chris, how are you?
I am good, sir. It's good to be here with you.
Likewise, thank you for coming on. Where are you at the moment, Chris?
I am in Spain.
Oh, nice. Okay, very nice. Nice weather there at the moment, a little bit cold.
It's a little too cold, man. That's nobody warned me. The European summer was a lot of fun. Nobody warned me about the European winter.
Yeah, not so much fun. Absolutely. I'm in London at the moment, and definitely not so nice here as well. Okay, Chris, before we get into the world of what you're doing at YellowCard, I want to know a little bit more about you. Tell me something about yourself, which not many people may know about Chris, CEO of YellowCard.
You know, that's a tricky question because I know all of it, and so it's hard to say. It's hard to say what other people might or might not know. It was a relatively simple upbringing, right? I grew up in southern Louisiana in the U.S. Went to college in Alabama. I really didn't move around much as a kid, right? We never went on vacations, never really went any. I mean, basically, my entire worldview was basically shaped by where I could drive a car to, right? And so I think the only like fact that I could think of would be that I had been on a plane 4 times before starting the company. So so very and it's return trips, right? So so one each way. So so very limited travel experience before getting into this.
Wow. Okay. I actually really want to dive deep into basically your history behind this as well, because you've got a very interesting history to becoming CEO of such a huge company already. But before we do, could you just, for our listeners, give us a little bit more about what is YellowCard? What is the mission of YellowCard?
Yeah, so I think at a high level, we are the largest crypto exchange on the African continent. So we work in 16 countries. You can think of the product very similar to Cash App or Coinbase or whatever you might be familiar with in US, Europe perspective. And yeah, I mean, essentially, our mission aligns very directly, I think, to the core mission of Bitcoin, right? And sort of the core mission of that original, white paper, which is we want to make sure that this technology, decentralized finance, and all of that is available anywhere in the world, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, all of that.
Very nice, and is going very well. Not too long being on the show, I guess. It's had quite a tough start because obviously with COVID as well, but maybe that's something that we can speak about, obviously helping you guys out. But before we do, okay, so with your journey, let's start here. Before you became a CEO, you were first company you've ever founded, yeah? First company you've ever been CEO of. That was a huge jump from what you were doing before. So you were, correct me if I'm wrong here, more writing, more content kind of side of it, into this jump into CEO. How did you feel that gap of how much you've got to learn from that to?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, before this, my entire professional career was basically selling Pokemon cards on the internet, right? And so I did that for a while. I did get into writing. I got into like ghost writing and article writing and everything, especially around sports. But I mean, I think the real answer is there's absolutely nothing that prepares you for sort of being a CEO. There's no books that I read that I would really point to and be like, yeah, this is what it's, not to knock anybody that, does that, right? But I just I don't know. I found that, there's really nothing that prepares you for having to deal with literally everything, right? I mean, no matter what the problem is, no matter what is going on, you have to deal with it, right? And so you deal with such a mishmash of random occurrences, right? And so much stuff goes wrong. There's not really a great way to prepare for it. And so, I mean, in terms of what was the transition like, I wouldn't even call it a transition, right? It's like pulling the emergency brake on the car, getting out, and then taking another car, right? I mean, just completely starting over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's less of a transition, more of like a getting shot out of a cannon, right?
Wow. Okay. Really thrown in the deep end there. Tell me then. So obviously, you've been going around 7 years now. I'm guessing the YellowCard. Yeah, around 7 years.
Yes.
What do you know now which you didn't know at the beginning? Like, what's that one thing, if you can put your kind of finger on one thing which you know now?
If you put out a V1 of your app or product or whatever it is, and you don't look back and you're not completely embarrassed by that V1, then you waited way too long to put it out in the market.
Uh-huh.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, like we look back at like the early screens and the UI and everything from like the early days, and it's like, oh my God, what were we thinking? Right.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is like that's actually the reaction that you should have, right? Because what it means is that we put it out in the market and we built upon it, right? And I mean, we rebranded, not, we didn't change the name, but I mean, we rebrand the logo and everything changed multiple times, and the brand image and the colors and all of that, right? But yeah, I mean, it's if you wait for everything to be perfect, then you're waiting way too long, right? And I think there's plenty of examples of that, and I think it's a lot easier to fall into that trap in a year like 2021, where money was free flowing, right? And people were able to raise a lot of money on pre-revenue, and people were able to raise money pre-launch and all of this, right? That's just not the case anymore, right? And so yeah, it's you now it's like you have to have something out in market, right? You have to show that it's working. And so just get it out there, right? Figure it out later. Put out something that might not work perfectly for everybody, right? And then fix it for that, 15-20% of people that doesn't work for, right?
You've got to kind of get rid of that idea of perfection. Yeah. So perfection is not going to work at the beginning.
Yes.
Are you yourself, are you a perfectionist? Was it difficult for you, or are you not a perfectionist?
I'm less of a perfectionist, more of a what would be the I don't know what the word would be. I'm one of those people that once I start something, I have a very tough time putting it down until it's finished.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so less of a focus on perfection, more of a focus on like completeness, right? And again, when like iterating on a product, I mean, even that can be, how do you say, like even that can be like a major hindrance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, for example, it's like we're putting out this product, and we started in Nigeria, right? And you look at the demographics of Nigeria in terms of phone usage, types of phones that they're using, browsers that they're using, and it's like, okay, are we actually going to make sure that the website can support an Android phone from 2012 that hasn't been updated,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at some point you have to kind of make those calls that okay, this is like, we're just going to exclude this for now, right? To be able to get an MVP out there, right? That can be V2, it can be V3, but it needs to be further down on the roadmap, right? Yeah, the more scope creep that you allow in that initial product, the longer it's going to take. And it's really easy to allow scope creep, right? That was something I was really bad at until we got like a really good product guy on the team that started pointing out, hey, this is why stuff takes so long to deliver, because you keep adding things, right?
Let's talk about that original MVP then. So you said it, you have to look back at it, you have to be embarrassed with it. What was your original MVP? How did it look?
Man, our original MVP was as bare bones as possible. In fact, come to think of it, we didn't even have a crypto wallet on the MVP. right? And so, I mean, we're an exchange, and literally all that you could do was send us money and then tell us where you wanted the Bitcoin, right? And like paste an address. And I mean, you know, again, like a lot of our users, right? I are first time crypto users, right? And so these guys don't have a wallet. They don't have anywhere to send this crypto, right? And we're asking them for a wallet address, right? And so yeah, I mean, it's like, wow, what were we thinking, right? We didn't even have didn't have a wallet system. We didn't have anywhere for people to be able to put the crypto. All we did was support like bank transfer in Nigeria, right? And so it was basically just like, hey, here's our bank account, send us money, and then tell us where to send the coins, right? And yeah, and I mean, like, it didn't look great, right? Any of that, right? But it worked, and it was good enough to get volumes flowing, right, and to sort of get people on the platform and all of that, and then we were able to, you know, iterate from there, right? I mean, so I mean, that V1 didn't even have a sell option, right? You couldn't send us crypto and get money back, right? So it was, I mean, it was one way, right? And so it's like, you know, look, we put that out there, and, you know, it was doing, I mean, it did well enough, right? I mean, it took us, what, probably a month to do 100,000 in volume, which I guess 100,000 sounds like a lot of money, but in crypto, that's like, you know, that's not like a drop in the bucket, right? But it took us probably a month to do our first 100K, right? And then it was just a matter of listening to people, right? So hey, you know, people are complaining that you know, well, now they have this crypto, what do they do with it, right? They don't have a way of selling it back to us. Okay, well, let's add that feature, right? You know, hey, I don't have a wallet, I don't have anywhere to send this. Okay, well, we need to add in a wallet, right? And it's really just a matter of sort of listening and iterating, right? Just understanding, you know, okay, look, we put this out there, it's working so far, but what do people need? What do people want from here?
You know, that kind of feedback in order for you to be able to perfect the product, but it just takes time, and you do just have to get it out there a lot of the time, just out there so people are using it, so you know what they want. Tell me, okay, so back in 2015, feels like quite a long time ago, 2015, feels like a lot has happened since 2015. How has
just a few things have happened since 2015.
Absolutely. Tell me, what was it like launching in 2015, and compare it to now? If you were going to launch now, what is the difference? How big is this difference in what, 7, almost 8 years?
So we didn't actually launch the product per se until 2019. And so it was, I mean, it was 4-ish years of like working on it, pivoting. I mean, in 2015, we were not focused on Africa at all, right? I don't think I knew where Nigeria was on a map in 2015, right? They don't teach you nearly as much about Africa as you might think they do in the Louisiana education system. And so, you know, I had, yeah, I mean, you know, we're working on, at the time it was a gift card that we planned on putting in CVS, Walmart, places like that. You'd be able to walk in, buy this gift card, and redeem it for crypto, right? And that's what we were working on building out. And yeah, I mean, it took so long trying to, you know, build this out and you know, work through the regulation in the US and all of this, right? There, you know, so many different issues that would keep popping up. And I think eventually by the time we did launch, again, I mean, you know, the big thing that we had learned is like, you know, crap, we just can't wait this long, right? It's like, you know, you need to, I mean, you know, so it's like, you know, I think it goes back to sort of the adage that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and give advice that I have not experienced, right? And that was like, it took those like 3.5 years to learn that lesson. Is it's like, oh crap, like, you know, what are we doing? Like, we haven't actually done anything. We're running around saying that we're entrepreneurs, but it's like, we don't have anything in market. We're not actually doing anything, right? Like, it's like, what am I doing all day, right? It took a while. We finally got it out there, and you know, things took off from there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'd be a much different world if we had launched in 2015. That's for sure. So we'd be a lot further along, I think.
Yeah. Tell me about, obviously, the challenges which have, so obviously focusing hugely on the African continent. Tell me about the challenges over kind of since you've launched then, let's say 2019-ish, then. what has been the changes and the challenges from 2019 up until 2022, end of 22 to today?
The big thing that changed was the world, right? And so, I mean, we launched what, like 8 months before the world ended, right? And so, we I think when we were starting out, we're launching, we're really bootstrapping it. We're struggling trying to figure out everything and all of that. And then I mean, volumes kind of started to pick up towards the end of 2019. But they were still small, right? I mean, we were doing maybe like $1 million a month, which again sounds like a lot of money, but in crypto, that's not a lot of money at all, right? And then COVID hits, and almost overnight, we're doing like $1 million a day, right?
Wow.
I mean, COVID was just sort of the rocket ship roller coaster that really set things off, right? And so, I mean, what changed is we went from what I like to say, we went from like plain startup, right? And like I said, hey, we're building this, look at us, right? To like running a startup, to like, oh shit, what do we do now? um and yeah, I mean, and it's, I mean, we had to figure everything out on the go. We had a few people that we could kind of turn to for like advice and mentorship, but I mean, frankly, there's just not a lot of people that have done something like this, right? I mean, we're in a unique industry
Blueprint.
on a continent that most people can't point out on a map, right? And so it was, it was really just a sort of shock to the system, right?
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with from $1 million per month to $1 million a day? Like, obviously, the amount of work that you've got. How did your team just have to grow from the next day?
Yeah, we just had to grow the team really quickly, right? And I think the cool thing about it is, and again, like going back to sort of what changed between like 2019 and 2020, 2022 is like, I mean, we're a fully grown pandemic startup, right? So I mean, we are like 2020 is when we really started hiring people, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter where these people are, right? Because there's no such thing as offices anymore, right? And so, I mean, yeah, we started hiring from literally wherever we could find the best people, right? And so, I mean, now, I mean, fast forward to today, we have over 200 people in 21 countries.
Wow.
And it's because during that time, we just started hiring from wherever we were finding that talent, right? And so, I mean, we ended up with people not just in the countries we were operating in, which at the time was what, 7 in 2020. But I mean, we ended up with people in Ethiopia. We ended up with people in the US. We ended up with people in, DRC. We ended up with people in every part of the continent, right? And just all over, right? I mean, we found people wherever we could find that top talent. And yeah, I mean, it was just, it worked out well because it didn't matter on either side. It didn't matter to us if anybody's going to an office, because we don't have offices anymore, right? Offices don't exist anymore. And it didn't matter to the employee if we had an office or not, because, again, offices don't exist. Everybody wants to work from home, right? And so, yeah, it worked out really well on both sides during the pandemic, right?
Tell me about the difficulty with that, though, because obviously from 7 countries to 21, that's a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people and beings and beliefs. How do you make that work?
I wish I had like a magic answer, right? It's just a matter of, it's really just a matter of being aware of it, right? It's really just a matter of being aware that like people in Nigeria have, act differently and have different reactions to different things than people in South Africa, than people in Europe, than people in the US, than people in, Kenya, than people in any other part of the continent or country or world for that matter, right? And yeah, and I mean, over time, as you meet more people from, these various different parts of the world, you get more experienced in you get more experience in understanding, hey, this is generally what, people are like in, this country, right? This is generally what people are like in this country. And, and so like, if you're doing this, then you need to be more careful, here or there, right? Certain cultures, people are more dramatic about certain things, right? Certain cultures, people don't want to be bothered with certain things, right? To use an example that that I got like in Britain, right? You're from the UK, right? The first time I ever went to Britain, I got yelled at because I was standing on the wrong side of the escalator, right? It's stuff like that, right? That you just kind of pick up as you go. And it's yeah, I mean, it's really just a matter of being aware of it, right? Because the reality is there's no crash course, right? It's like you can, have a major in international business and it's not going to teach you how to deal with people from Cameroon, right? Like, and so it's just a matter of like understanding, asking questions, right? Trying to understand people and their culture. And I mean, I think despite what a lot of people in the US seem to think, the more questions that you ask, the more responsive people seem to be to it, right? Like people, generally my experience has been that people like it when you try to understand their culture and when you try to get involved in their culture and experience their culture and all of that, right? And so that's really what it comes down to, is just, like having that mutual respect for like other cultures and then trying to understand it and involve yourself in it as much as you can.
Yes. Tell me about the challenges of expanding in Africa as a continent. Is every country in Africa, do they have kind of different regulations, different kind of needs, or is it pretty much similar to what they want?
No, it's all very different, right? I mean, it's I think that there's often there's this misconception that Africa is just sort of one big conglomerate, right? And I think people, especially in the West, tend to sort of lump the whole continent together. Frankly, doing that would be like lumping all of Europe together, right? It's like it's like, Italy and the UK are not that similar, right? I mean, maybe a little, right? But like not much. No, the language is different, the culture is different, there's a lot of differences, right? It'd be the same for like Botswana and Nigeria, right? I mean, you're talking about two countries that have about as much to do with each other as, the UK and China, right? And so I mean, it's just totally different, right? Totally different languages, cultures, people, all of it, right? And so that's been the biggest challenge with growing across the continent, right? Is that you're dealing with just diverse countries that, I mean, in a lot of cases have, not only is the country itself unique, but then within the country you have a lot of unique different cultures, right? And so I mean, Nigeria is half Christian, half Muslim, right? And the Muslim half is very different than the Christian half in terms of, culture and all of that for, religious and historical reasons, right? And so, it's like even within countries, you have this issue. Never mind growing across the continent. And so I mean, for us, it's really been a matter of finding the best talent on the ground that we can. So what we do sort of from a leadership perspective is we try to identify where's there a market for this? Where does this make sense? Where is the regulation potentially friendly towards this, that kind of thing? And then we try to find the best people that we can on the ground. And really work with them to grow the business there, right? It's tough to do it otherwise, right? You have to have somebody that really knows the ropes and that really understands the culture and the context and all of that to be able to make it work.
How do you find them?
There's no easy way, right? I mean, so we work with a very good recruiting firm that we've worked with for a while, and we give them very specific guidelines on what we need, and then basically send them out to that country and say, like, find us somebody that matches this, right? And so I mean, typically if we're looking for like a leader for a country, right? Typically, we're looking for somebody that that has some sort of startup experience locally, right? That's kind of had some experience with just like growth hacking on the ground, and then we give them the resources from sort of a centralized perspective to be able to make things work there, right? And so yeah, that's especially now that we're a little bit bigger, that's the good part about it, is that okay, it's not just somebody on the ground in Ghana that has to do everything by themselves, right? They have access to a marketing team, they have access to a compliance team, to a legal team, all of that.
How much do you then, Chris, how much, as the CEO, how much do you need to know when you're going into these new territories, new areas, new countries? How much do you yourself need to educate, or do you just have a huge amount of trust in the people that you are hiring and working with?
Both, right? So I think when you're going in, right, it's a matter of trusting good people on the ground to teach you everything that you need to know about that place, right? And so that's really the first step, right? Because I mean, again, there's no book that you can read about how to do business in Botswana, right? There's no book that you can read on how to do business in Zambia. And so it's really about like finding that person and then just trying to learn everything that you can, right? And what I would say is that I think part of the reason that we've been so successful is because we've taken that approach, right? I think that there's two wrong ways to try to do it. One is to go fully and only local, right? Where it's like, hey, for let's say Zambia, we're only going to have Zambians on the team. Nobody else is going to touch it. It's only going to be them running it, right? I think that's the wrong approach. And the other wrong approach is we're not going to have any Zambians on the team. We're just going to, take whatever we have and plug it in there, and it's going to work, right? You need to combine the two, right? Because the reality is that like I, for example, as having now seen this across 16 countries, have a unique sort of Pan-African perspective on certain things that do and do not work. And then the local team has very granular knowledge on how things work locally, right? And the thing is that the local team their knowledge is extremely important, but it might be too inward looking, right? They might only have experience in that country. Whereas like for me and for anybody else on the leadership team coming in, we don't have any experience in that country, right? We have this outside perspective on like, hey, maybe we should try this, but we don't have any idea how things work locally, right? And so when you combine the two, it brings you to a really a good place where all of a sudden you start finding things that work, right? You start being a little bit more innovative, right, in the country, right? Because you're not hindered by like solely the like internal looking sort of conservative approach, right? But at the same time, you know how to take those learnings from other places and localize them, right? And so that's really the only way to do it. Is you need both, right? You need that good local talent, but then also you need somebody that has sort of a broader view that can work with them to bring everything together.
Absolutely. I guess it's that idea of say like a football team. Everyone's got their kind of roles to play, and that's how together they can score on their own. The likelihood of them scoring is a lot less. Tell me, let's go a little bit more into crypto. So I've heard a lot recently about, is it time to call time on crypto? Yeah, this idea of where are we going? Where are we going with crypto, and where do we need to go with crypto? What is your opinion on this?
I think crypto is going to be fine. I've been in the space since 2013, so I've seen every cycle and bull run and collapse and right. And so I have a very jaded view of all of these these market cycles at this point, where it's like, okay, here we go again, right? Crypto winter. Yeah, I mean, I think crypto is going to be fine. What I would say is like what I wish would happen is that people will come out of this and they'll realize, hey, maybe crypto is about more than speculation, right? Maybe it's about more than the price, right? Maybe it's about sort of the original idea behind Bitcoin, which is, this peer-to-peer electronic cash, right? How do we, maybe it's about actually enabling payments in, I mean, we talked about this earlier, in places like Ukraine, in places like Africa, right? It's, how do we promote this technology as actually better and more effective control over your own finances in places where you cannot necessarily trust the local currency, right? Yeah, and so that's my hope, is that that's kind of what comes out of this, this current cycle. All that being said, we'll hit another bull market, and people will dump all of their money into Dogecoin and Shiba Inu like before, and and then the cycle repeats, right? So yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, I focus pretty solely on the technology, right? My personal portfolio is not doing great, but from a company perspective, we're not betting on the price, right? It's if our investors wanted Bitcoin exposure, they would just buy Bitcoin, right? So, and so yeah, I mean, it's yeah, for us, I mean, we're fully focused on the technology, right, and the problems that this technology solves, rather than what's the price of Bitcoin. Right?
Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the problems the technology is solving. What technologies are you providing and working on in order to solve these problems?
Yeah, I mean, so all that we provide is the access, right? And that's really our goal, is to provide that access, right? I think that anybody around the world should be able to access this technology, right? And so, I mean, from our perspective, it's the on-ramps, the off-ramps, right? Cash, mobile money, bank transfer. How do you buy crypto in, a certain country? How do you sell it? That kind of thing, right? But I mean, the technology itself, right? Crypto, blockchain technology, whatever you want to call it, it provides this system that allows people to really be able to control their own wealth, right? Really be able to control their own finances, no matter how much they have, right? Whether you're talking about, somebody that has a couple of dollars, or, a couple $100,000. And I mean, it enables things that in a lot of countries just don't really exist in practice, right? Such as like free international transfers, right? Being able to receive remittance in a cost-effective way, right? Being able to save money against inflation, right? Yeah, I mean, it provides things that, I mean, again, if you have like a US or UK bank account, that might seem trivial, right? But to a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world, are extremely important, and people just don't have access to, right?
Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for sharing everything about what you're doing at YellowCard. It's so amazing to speak to you, and yeah, really insightful. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.